right. Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Eggleston, and I run Course Report, which is a resource to help you find the right bootcamp for you. If you've watched these videos before, then you know that. And if you haven't watched these videos before, then this is my one shameless plug. You can use Course Report to research the best coding bootcamps, cybersecurity bootcamps all over the world, figure out which languages to learn, where to apply, and how to even fund your coding bootcamp experience. So one of the questions that we have started to get more often is around cybersecurity. There are bootcamps now that are teaching cybersecurity analytics, and then other courses that are teaching cybersecurity engineering. And the question that we're hearing from you all is, what's the difference between the two? So today I've got two experts, Flatiron School instructors, Andrew Mandula and Stephen Barnes. And they're gonna give us the breakdown between these two career paths, cybersecurity engineering and cybersecurity analytics. So Andrew and Stephen, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks for having us. Should be a great time.
So I've got a ton of questions. We'll hop into those really quickly. But first, I just wanted to start off by asking how you two got into cybersecurity. Andrew, maybe you can start. How did you get started in cybersecurity?
Sure. So I went through a traditional university learning how to do computer graphics and computer programming for video games. I graduated and then went to go work at a publisher for a few years where I did that. I kind of did not enjoy doing that work. It was a lot of stressful, long hours, and kind of wanted something a little more fulfilling where I'm actually helping people. So I actually found the boot camp that I'm now teaching at, went through that program myself, and then got a job working with a company in Denver that kind of helps the startups and smaller companies that are more local with making sure they're safe and secure on the internet.
Cool. And Stephen, how about you? Did you take a kind of traditional path into cybersecurity?
I don't know if it's traditional or not, but I started with a master's degree in network engineering. But that was voice networks before we had much data. That was really before we had dial-up data and AOL. So I did a lot of engineering, but I was working with a manufacturer, Nortel Networks. When they went bankrupt and downturn of 2000, I got into a PhD program and then started teaching. But I've been doing networking stuff since 1990. So I have a pretty strong background on the networking and infrastructure side. Still sliding into all of the cybersecurity side, but you can't do this without really a deep understanding of networking. And so my role is as much as anything is to make sure students have a strong foundation to work with. And I've been following cybersecurity since before the Morse worm came out. Well, since then, because that's where it started and going forward. So it's kind of fun.
Because you mentioned like when cybersecurity kind of came on the scene as a word, like can you just maybe give us a super high level background on like why we say the word cybersecurity now?
Yeah, when the internet first came out, it was a trusted network. Everybody on it was known to everybody else, at least in the very, very early days, and people just trusted each other. And then the Morse worm, which was more of an accident than anything else, we realized that we couldn't necessarily trust everything on the network. And that evolved into the security part of the word, and cyber sort of evolved alongside of it. But it's taken a long time for us to figure out that it's actually much harder to protect things than to connect things. So I don't know if that's the best answer to your question,
great.
but there's just a tremendous amount of history there.
That's great. I'm just curious, what motivated you both to teach cybersecurity? I mean, this is a really lucrative, career right now. Like, why do you want to teach kind of the next generation of cybersecurity folks, and specifically at Flatiron School?
I think for me, we need cybersecurity professionals. This is a thing that is, you think about there are jobs that we're always going to need, no matter how amazing and advanced our world is. You're always going to need doctors. You're always going to need garbage men. We're now in a world where we're always going to need cybersecurity professionals, and we just aren't growing enough talent. We don't have enough people who are able to get well versed. A lot of people who are at positions that myself or Stephen have had in the past have accidentally grown into cybersecurity. They kind of fell in their lap. Someone needed to do this. So I really want to be able to help people who want to become that professional in the cybersecurity realm grow into that and not just kind of luck into it because they're at the right organization at the right time.
So just as we see, in fields like web development, mobile development, there are obviously different specializations in cybersecurity. Two of those that we're hearing more often, and I know Flatiron School teaches a cybersecurity analytics course and a cybersecurity engineering course. So I just want to compare those. Andrew, maybe you could start. What is cybersecurity engineering at a high level?
Sure. Yeah. The first thing I want to make sure everybody knows is that when you think about a lot of other specializations you can get in a boot camp, it's like, I'm going to learn how to make websites, either on the front end or the back end, right? There's very specialized languages and tools I'm going to learn. That is not the case for either of the cybersecurity programs, engineering or analytics. The real difference between the two of them is going to be, which question do you want to answer more when it comes to cybersecurity? Do you want to be the person in the room that can answer how it works? Or do you want to be the person in the room that can answer why it works? The why is going to be the engineering, that you need to have a much deeper understanding of everything that happens in computers. Whereas the how, you don't need as much of a deep understanding, but instead what you're going to have is a much deeper analytical mind that can really easily find patterns and connect disparate pieces of information to see a new trend. They're both really important. But at the end of the day, it's when you're learning this, which do you want to be able to be in the room? Do you want to be the driver of the race car, or do you want to be the technician who's making sure that the race car can perform as well as possible?
Mm-hmm. That's a great way to think about it. I think there's the other thing to think about this is that part of it is very analytical, but it's kind of weird, but we borrow a tremendous amount of the analytical approaches from the military, because we're looking at an adversary and what are their motivations. And so I teach the strategy class, which is one of the opening classes and these things. And the very first thing we look at is Sun Tzu, The Art of War. And it's all about four key things. Know yourself and what you're capable of, or your organization. Know your enemy. Know your environment. What's the battlefield? Okay. And if you know all of these things, then it's just a matter of being able to address them properly. So that's where there's a lot of weakness, is most people don't understand the environment and what the attacks might be and how to handle it. They probably have a feel for how good or bad they are. They probably may have a little feel for the enemy, but if the enemy knows more about it than you do, they're going to win every time. So it's all about understanding this thing, and that comes straight out of the Art of War. It comes straight out of the military mindset, and the best people in this space are former DoD people.
Interesting.
Boot camp, great. Engineering, yeah, more depth, more engineering. You look at the guys coming out of the Air Force, and they have an engineering degree in this stuff. Great. There are other programs that teach that. We're more about operations, more about the analytics, and how to do the how it works and how to stop it.
I love that you mentioned that, though, because I talk to so many people who are coming out of the military, one role or another, and like re-entering civilian life. And there's obviously a lot of programs like vet tech, and a lot of boot camps accept the GI Bill now, and so there is kind of a real path there into cybersecurity. That's really interesting. Stephen, since you mentioned network engineering before, I just want to get into kind of the skills that someone needs to know in order to be a cybersecurity engineer versus a cybersecurity analyst. So is network engineering kind of the baseline, like that's what you learn first, and then you go into one of those kind of fields, or maybe just both of y'all, if you want to tell us what kind of skills you need to know to be an analyst versus engineer.
Both people need to know something about the network. It's the level of depth that differs. Okay. Operationally, you need to know what's going on. You need to know the basics of how firewalls and other routers and devices work. I'm not going to try to detail that here, but everybody needs to know how they work at a fundamental level. Okay. The engineering types need to be able to understand why they're doing what they do, so that they can poke holes in what the attackers might be trying to abuse in that process. Some of our protocols, like TCP, by design, cannot be patched. We have to figure out how to protect them despite this. Okay, the engineering types do that. The analytical types just say, okay, they're abusing it. Why don't we stop it? Okay, so there's a bit of difference in that sense. Both need a fundamental knowledge of it. It's the level of depth, and I think we offer that in both places here. That's the networking side. Andrew gets to talk about the systems side, but it's absolutely equivalent in importance.
Yep. So there's only really one thing you need to know with either program. If you want to do engineering analytics, you only need to know everything. And when I mean everything, I mean the networking, all the networking that Stephen was talking about, all the systems and programming and cryptography that I teach in the program. You only need to understand the current geopolitical climate of not only your nation, with the other nations in the world where a lot of our threat actors will come from, like Russia, Israel. We've got a lot of things happening now currently in South America. All of these different nations and how they directly care about your organization, your industry, and how it's being targeted. You just need to have an intimate knowledge of only everything in the world and how all this knowledge transpires. So to me, that's what makes the field so exciting. Is there's never a moment. It's not like getting your getting a pilot's license where eventually you know how to do this. It's just operating a machine, and you just have to put in the hours to get the license. It's never going to be like that kind of a job. It's always going to be something where there's something new. I need to learn this new thing. There's a new supply chain I have to deal with. I need to think about, this chip is coming from China. What part of China is it coming from? Is this a safe chip from a known company that has close ties to the US or not? Is this a piece of software that I'm allowed to edit so that I can ensure it's securely updating or not? It just is always evolving.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Last year, we were looking in my family, talking about the growth of content and knowledge in the medical field. And the amount of information that a doctor needs to keep in their head appears to be doubling about every 7 years. Think about that. Cybersecurity is probably doubling almost that fast in what we need to keep track of. Though in many ways, there's a bit of foundation that's a little bit more stable. Just like core biology is still stable, but that's where the networking is pretty stable. But there is so much going on, the evolution of things. We're seeing transformations in attacks. We're seeing transformations, all this other stuff. It's one area where continuous learning is mandatory, or you're going to fall behind.
So if we just look at maybe like the curricula in Flatiron's cybersecurity engineering curriculum versus their analytics, it's not that there's necessarily like one thing that you're learning in the engineering course that you're not learning in analytics. It's just that you're going into far more depth.
Right. So a good example is cryptography. I teach 9 weeks of cryptography in the cybersecurity engineering program. In the analytics program, I'm not doing the same sort of work I do in those 9 weeks in engineering, where I'm going through the encryption methodologies we use for things like HTTPS. I'm having you do the math and handwrite the algorithms. When I'm analytics, I walk you through the algorithm. I make sure you high level functionally understand it, and then we move on.
Right.
Got it. So is there I feel like y'all have given, y'all maybe highlighted a little bit of this already, but is there a certain type of student that you would recommend specialize in either engineering or analytics? Like if I'm a complete beginner, but I know I want to start my journey into cybersecurity, what would you suggest best?
The first question you have to answer for yourself is, how curious are you? When you see something new, do you just need to know how it works, or do you need to know why that is how it works? If you just are good enough with understanding the 1, 2, 3, 4, and then looking at continuously using that same 1, 2, 3, 4 that you know works, analytics will be a good fit for you. If that's not good enough, if you just know, oh, I do 1, 2, 3, 4, but why is 2 second? Why isn't it third? If you have that sort of a mind that you really need to get into that nitty gritty, engineering is going to be a better fit for you, because we will get into all that nitty gritty when it comes to cybersecurity.
How about like degrees? Like, do I need to have a certain actual like college degree to get into either field?
I will say the biggest thing that I see in students that differentiates them from students who are able to excel isn't a college degree, isn't a programming background, isn't a networking background like Stephen has. It is understanding how they learn and how to teach themselves. You're going to spend a lot of time and money with myself and Stephen, but there's a lot of stuff that we're going to throw at you, like it's going to happen in the real world, and say, cool, here's this new piece of tech, figure it out. I need you to figure this out in 2 hours. And that's not because we don't want to train you, it's because we're training you for the real world. Everything I teach you, I guarantee in 2 years, you'll go, oh man, that's old now, I have to learn this new thing. And it's not that we're not updating our curriculum constantly, we do that. It's just that this is such a fast moving industry that everyone is constantly evolving
Yeah. And we have problems keeping the tool sets up to date enough to be able to teach the right stuff. We don't have enough time ourselves to keep ourselves up to speed. We try, but we're sitting there, and there are cases where we do the lab the same time the students do it, just to figure out how it works, because it's moving that fast. So backgrounds, you need to be capable of self-learning. College stuff, not really required, but you need to be capable of doing that sort of thing. Okay, not everybody does it, can, but you need to be able to work with a team. Teamwork is absolutely essential. You can't be out there on your own. There's no Lone Rangers in this space. You fail miserably. So you got to be able to work with a team. You got to be able to understand that different people on a team have different skill sets and different capabilities, and those complement each other, and figure out how to work together on that. So that's the real thing. My background, I've been all the way through academics. I've taught at the graduate level. I've taught at the university level. I see all kinds of different students. The best ones are the ones that probe and ask.
Wonderful. Okay. So both of y'all have mentioned the real world a couple of times now. So maybe we can move into, what does the day-to-day job actually look like? And are there key differences between the two jobs of an analyst and an engineer on the, just kind of day-to-day basis?
So for if you graduate from our cybersecurity analytics program, the job right out of the gate that is an easy get for almost any graduate is going to be working as a SOC analyst, SOC standing for Secure Operations Center. These can be parts of an organization like a large company, like a Fortune 500 company like Coca-Cola, or they can be outsourced that are hired on by a contract for a smaller business. And they essentially are able to plug into the network of that organization, and then you're the vanguards, you're the watchdogs of what's going on the network, to try to determine if Bob in accounting, who's in Omaha when it's 3 a.m. in Omaha, really is logging into the HR server to download 25 gigabytes of personal information about every employee. Is that really something he would be doing right now, or would he be asleep? That's the sort of work that a security analyst is doing. This is also shift work, which means that one of the things that a lot of students aren't cool with at first is that you might be working nights. You are the new employee at an organization, right? You're the low person on the totem pole. If you've been working at a SOC for 2-3 years, you don't want to work the night shifts, right? You want to work normal business hours. So you might have to be stretched for the first 3 to 6 months, your working time. But by doing that, you're going to see a lot of activity. And that's often a job I'll recommend for students who really want to stop the bad guys, but take the cybersecurity engineering course load, because you just are constantly inundated, because you are literally seeing the attackers and the sort of work that they do and trying to determine how to defend against them.
And Stephen, how about on the engineer side? Would you expect that or what is the type of role that you could go into immediately? And
Well,
would you expect that type of shift work?
oh, yeah, certainly would end up seeing some shift work. And I think that's pretty much for everybody in the space because it's a 24-hour world. Okay. And we have to live with that and work with that. But I think the engineers are going to do a little bit more of how to build this network or how to keep it improved, fixing the problems going into the repairs. The analysts are going to be finding it, and sometimes they hand it off to the engineering teams. Often they continue to work together all the way through. But the engineers are going to be more about how do we repair this? How do we prevent it from happening in the future? What changes do we need to make? So they have that more depth to be able to do that.
Not so much in like web development, mobile development, but in cybersecurity, it seems like a field where certifications seem to be quite important. Are there like specific certifications that your students are definitely getting when they, like before they graduate Flatiron or like right after? Or could y'all just kind of like walk through like the level of certifications that you need to start your career?
Regardless of if you take the cybersecurity analytics or the cybersecurity engineering, the certification that is seen as the foundational, oh, you are a beginner cybersecurity professional, is the CompTIA Cybersecurity Plus or CYSA Plus certification. And we train you for, in the analytics, the shorter program, I would say 80 to 85% of the material taught on that last 15%. I usually tell students, as soon as you graduate, you're not done. Spend a week studying that last 15% we didn't go over. It's not complicated stuff. It's just a little bit more in depth than what we give you foundationally because our program's only those 12 weeks. They do that for a week. They take that test and they ace it, no problem. For engineering students, we teach about 90% of that material to 95% of that material. So for them, they could easily just, as soon as they graduate the next week, they take it and no problem, they have that done. From there, what certifications you get come down to what you want to specialize in. And oftentimes all my students come in, I want to be a pen tester. I want to be this. I want to be that. And I go, this is week one. You are learning cybersecurity. You are going to touch all the facets of cybersecurity by the time you graduate. When you graduate is when you should be figuring out what you want to do. Because you might do pen testing when we do pen testing in later systems classes and go, oh, I have to know assembly and be able to read binary. That's hard. No, thank you.
Yeah. So there's a lot around there. The top of the heap is the CISSP. You can get there from this basis, but it takes a bunch of years of experience on top of what we do here to really shoot that one easily. There's a whole host of other things out there. There are vendor-specific versions of this stuff, and they're all about knowing the vendor products. There's a strong path in the networking space independent of the cybersecurity. And again, it's all about the knowing the devices and being able to hit the keystrokes fast enough to do the job. And so that's a practice-based thing as much as anything else. But that's because it's vendor specific and they're really focused on their stuff.
Sure.
Not everybody's that way. All of those things have value along the way. Academic programs are trying to compete in this space, but it's changing so fast that they, while there are plenty of schools and plenty of degrees, and I've taught a few of them, they just don't have the cachet that some of the certifications do. And it's inverted from typical environment. You'd think a graduate degree from a reputable top 100 school would be key to anything, and no. Do you have that certification?
That's a really good point. That's a great point. Y'all, so at this particular moment in time, I'm curious if you're getting this question from students more. We can't like ignore the just general global climate right now. Do you have students saying, you know, is this the right time for me to do a cybersecurity boot camp? Or should I, you know, wait till things go quote unquote back to normal? And like, what's your answer there? Is this a recession-proof industry?
I have two things for that. One is more focused on the person wanting to gain a new skill set. And this is for any boot camp. Right now is a great time to go do boot camp if you have the funds for it, because you probably have the time. There's not a lot of other distractions going on right now. So now is a time where you're not going to feel like you're missing out on something because you have to sit here and study or because you have to do this work. So I say for that reason alone, it's a perfect time to go do a boot camp. On the other hand, is cybersecurity a recession-proof industry? It is, for one simple fact: whenever an economy starts to dip, crime goes up. And the easiest kind of crime you can do is cybersecurity crime, because for some people, you don't even have to leave your house. So I have seen from students who I keep in close contact with who just graduated the program 3 months ago, who are now working at places like VMware Carbon Black on their SOC team, that from the time they started there to now, in that 3-month span, they have seen the sort of attacks on Windows remote login go up 300% in organizations across the board.
Yeah, especially in a world where so much more business is being done online, business that was in person before. That's a very good point. I didn't think of that. Okay, well, y'all, final question. I'm going to let you get back to your day. I know you have a lot of students to teach. Any favorite resources for a beginner who wants to get started in cybersecurity? Either something you'll teach like an intro class at Flatiron School, or just something free online that you love, a community, of online resource, anything like that?
Steve?
I just start reading. There's a long list of stuff that you can learn by just reading. Get on one of the regular daily email lists. My favorite is called Naked Security by Sophos. Sophos is one of the big UK cyber security analytics firms. Do great work. Their list is fabulous. Black Hat and DEF CON have been going on in Las Vegas, or well, virtually this year, but normally it'd be in Vegas. Huge hacker conference. It's all virtual. Most of it's free this week. Go find some of their videos and watch them. There are some fabulous talks. One of my students yesterday was talking about the one he watched about picking locks. I mean, as in the thing on your front door. Okay. And you wonder why, is that a cybersecurity thing? Well, today's locks are getting electronic.
That's
Hotels
true.
are electronic, and every year they have a track on lockpicking. There's a fabulous track on automobile hacking that's been going on for a couple of years now. And there's a lot more basic stuff. They have training programs tied to that as well that don't get the headlines, but have some good stuff to get started. Go watch it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And of course, you can start with The Art of War. Casual.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Everyone, whatever you go do with your life, you should start with The Art of War. Gonna make pastry, start with The Art of War. For me, I have 3 recommendations I usually throw out. One is a book. It is not freely available, but it is a well-written book called Sandworm by Andy Greenberg. Andy Greenberg is a reporter for the magazine Wired, who does all their cybersecurity writing, and it's about the Sandworm attack. This is a great book because it expects you to not have a technical background, but by the end of it, you'll be able to very easily describe what kind of malware was used to take down the Ukraine power grid in 2016. You'll be able to have a deep understanding of how exactly did the United States stop the nuclear program in Iran. You'll have a deep, detailed understanding of all these things and so much more without having to have a deep technical background. That's a great one if you can spare the $20-ish for it. It's a fun read. Another thing that is free that you can go look up is go down the internet rabbit hole reading about the Chaos Computing Club based in Germany. They've been around since the 1980s. They have both worked for the good of the general public, helping in the early 80s and 90s banks in Germany lock down their internet logins so that people can't steal money, to being antagonists to the general public, trying to create buzz and information about cybersecurity concerns they were seeing. So that's freely available. They have a great website. There's a lot of information you can find out about them online. There's plenty of reading you can do about it for free. And then the third thing I usually tell people to go do is you use computers. There's this great thing you can go do, which is just start searching what you want to know more about a specific thing in a computer. Like I said, if you really want to do this, you're curious, go use that curiosity and start learning now about things. Because oftentimes that skill that you're learning right there is not going to go away just because you go through a program or have a certification. All that's changing is the terms you're searching.
Amazing. Well, I think that is the perfect place to wrap up. Andrew, Stephen, I cannot thank you enough for joining us and talking to us about cybersecurity. We will post a recording and a transcript of this video interview on the Course Report blog. And if you're watching this, you can comment below and let us know what topic you'd like us to cover on the next Course Report video Q&A series. We will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.